Hey, Eagle fans, I'm Thomas Mott. Welcome to Philadelphia Eagles Now. Plenty of really juicy Eagles news and rumors coming up in today's video. First, though, we have a mailbag video coming up next couple of days. So go down below. You guys know the drill. I don't even have to say anything, right? You know. Hashtag Eagles down below. Ask your Eagle-related question, and we will pull it, most likely, if it's good, for a mailbag video coming up here in just a couple of days. All right, it's a Tuesday. Let's jump into the latest Eagles news and rumors. We, of course, start with an interesting report that came out from multiple sources. CBS Sports had this, NFL Network had this, and it obviously appears to be true, but the fact that it didn't happen means it kind of got shuffled down in the actual full news because the Eagles had an actual game on Sunday, but I want to bring it up to you guys here to start the show, and that is just how close the Eagles were to trading Fletcher Cox. Now, we knew that they were at least, listening to conversations and having phone calls at last week's trade deadline. Of course, no deal was actually done, although a new report suggests that it was the Steelers that were the team that was really trying to get a deal done in order to go ahead and acquire Fletcher Cox. Now, the big snag is that the Eagles wanted a third-round draft pick for Fletcher Cox, and the Steelers, of course, were unable to go ahead and give up a high draft pick. They wanted to kind of, pitch to the Eagles, hey, excuse me, listen, we'll take him off your hands because you obviously don't want to pay him this much money, so we'll give you like a fifth-round draft pick. You give us, obviously, Fletcher Cox, and then we'll go ahead and alleviate your ability to have a massive dead cap hit going into the 2022 season. Philadelphia said no, we needed at least a third-round draft pick, thus the deal was not done. Here is CBS Sports on the possibility of trading Cox and why the Steelers were actually interested in doing this. We'll throw it up on the screen right now. Quote, with elite defensive tackle Stephon Tuitt's return to play still murky, the Steelers engaged in trade talks with the Eagles ahead of last week's deadline centered around perennial Pro Bowl tackle Fletcher Cox, league sources said. Excuse me. With the sides unable to agree on a value, the Eagles focused primarily on moving players with expiring contracts, sources said, but Cox was brought up in some conversations with the Steelers showing interest. Pittsburgh has limited cap situation, but Cox's recently restructured deal afforded the team the flexibility required to add such a player. However, sources said it would have required at least a third-round pick to pry Cox away. The Steelers were not willing to do so, end quote. Now, whether you think this trade would have been good or bad for Philadelphia from a financial standpoint, to me, is essentially irrelevant because, one, it didn't happen. But what this actually shows me is that the Eagles understand what we're all seeing right now with our own eyes, and that is that Fletcher Cox is no longer an elite defensive tackle. Like his primetime days where he was a top 3 defensive tackle in the entire National Football League, right there alongside or behind Aaron Donald, are done. Literally, it's done. And if this season has gone to great lengths to show us that he truly is not where he is supposed to be. The Eagles have not registered a sack defensively in 3 of their last 4 games. Fletcher Cox has basically done nothing from a pressure standpoint, and even in previous years where the numbers weren't great, he was still being able to clog running lanes and really stuff the run, and this year you're just not seeing it at all. Fletcher Cox is clearly not an elite defensive tackle in the National Football League anymore, and it's very clear to me that the Eagles will try to trade him again probably this offseason, because technically he is signed through next season, and so Philadelphia is going to be paying him a lot of money, but I do think that this is just the beginning of a long offseason that will come for Philadelphia where they're going to try to get rid of some of these older, aging players who are eating a lot of money. That way they can get some draft picks in return and really reshuffle and rebuild the defense from the ground up. Because, listen, the entire defensive line is either not that great or old. They only have 2 really decent players on the defensive line right now who are actually contributing from a starting position. That's Javon Hargrave when healthy, and, of course, Josh Sweat. The rest of them are no good. Derek Barnett is no good. I think Fletcher Cox is still a good player, but he's not elite, and he costs way too much money. Ryan Kerrigan's been completely irrelevant. Obviously, we'll get Brandon Graham back next year, but he still is aging in up there. They need to get younger on the defensive line, and I think that's why we keep talking about them spending a high draft pick on a guy like the Thibodeau guy out of Oregon, the pass rusher, who to me is the best player in the upcoming 2022 NFL draft. So no surprise they tried to trade Cox. Interesting it was the Steelers, but I guess the fact that they were unwilling to go ahead and give up anything more than a 5th or 4th round draft pick and the Eagles wanted the 3rd was the reason why the deal did not get done. But I still think that a deal is going to happen probably sometime during the offseason next year because Cox's days in Philadelphia are definitely limited. All right, pin comment down below. Answered it during the ad break. Is Fletcher Cox still an elite defensive tackle? I don't think he is. I think he's good. He's not trash, obviously, a guy like Derek Barnett is, or even Ryan Kerrigan right now, but is he an elite defensive tackle? Type Y down below for yes, or type N down below for no. Okay, I want to get into this next story to me, which is really, really interesting and I think kind of fun as well. So the Eagles' play-by-play voice, of course, is Merrill Reese. If you are an Eagle fan, you obviously know who that is, the longest tenured play-by-play voice in the National Football League. And he was listening to 94.1 WIP on his drive home after calling the Eagles-Charger game, and he heard a guy named Elliot Shore-Parks, who, of course, we talk about a lot here on the channel, also works for 94.1 WIP, yes. And Parks said that the reason why the Eagles lost on Sunday was because Jalen Hurts didn't play very well. And that got Merrill Reese so upset upset that he called into the postgame show on his own station and just really gave a great defense of quarterback Jalen Hurts. And even though Hurts only completed 11 passes against the Chargers, I tend to kind of agree with what Merrill Reese is saying in this quote we'll show you here in just a second, and essentially saying that, listen, Hurts is not to be blamed for why the Eagles are losing some of these football games. I mean, it's not necessarily the reason why they're winning some of these football games, but the losses are not necessarily all on him. And honestly, if you listen to what Reese says, I kind of agree with him. We'll throw that up on the screen right now. Quote, "To blame this game on Jalen Hurts is insane. Yes, he missed a couple of passes, but that kid is getting better and better. They criticize him for not being accurate enough in the pocket, but he put the ball in some small windows to Devontae Smith. He threw bullseyes. Then you see the athleticism. He did amazing things, and then he takes the blame in the locker room. He has a great attitude. He's a great leader. I think the kid has a very high ceiling that if you're patient and you realize he only started 13 games, he's going to be just fine," end quote. Before I give you my thoughts, I want yours on this quote here from Merrill Reese. Is he right about Jalen Hurts? Do you think that, he's starting to make some better throws? He's obviously a leader in the locker room. He takes a lot of blame. Criticism. He's very athletic, which we can all agree on. He's been fantastic athletically running with the football. Do you agree with Merrill Reese, though, about Jalen Hurts? Type 1 down below for yes, type 2 down below for no. I agree with him, but I continue to kind of trend in the direction of I want Hurts to be the guy so bad, but I feel like I might be getting blinded a little bit by my want for him to be the guy. Because obviously I want him to be starting quarterback of the future, because as I've said, that means you don't waste draft picks on another rebuild with another young receiver in the 2022 NFL draft. I want to be able to spend those on defensive players, the way the Eagles are a lot faster in their rebuild to becoming a good football team again. But I do think that Reese makes some solid points about Jalen Hurts this year. Like, he is playing good football. And I know that he is missing some of these throws, and they're being highlighted a lot on Twitter, but he made a lot of throws in that fourth quarter against the Chargers that had the team in a position to win had the defense actually been able to get a stop. Like, the defense is obviously the problem right now in Philadelphia. Offense has had their issues, but the defense is really the main reason. And even though he hasn't necessarily thrown a ton of passes in terms of, touchdowns, only 11 passing touchdowns, only 4 interceptions. He has 500 yards rushing and 5 rushing touchdowns as well. So he has 16 total touchdowns, 4 interceptions, and he's looking at being on pace for almost 4,000 yards. So, I get the criticism of Hurts, and he is definitely not free of all blame. And a couple of passes early on in that football game were the difference maker. One of Jalen Hurts in the end zone that he should have hit, and one of Dallas Goedert in the first drive that he should have hit. But I do think that Reese has a solid point that this is a very young player, a very green player, only played in 13 games so far, and he is trending up, and he's a leader. And I think he's kind of one of the better quarterback leaders the Eagles have had in that locker room in a long time, and I think the guys appreciate him. So I'll keep riding Hurts for the rest of the year, and then we'll kind of reassess it at the end of the 2021 season. Okay, before we move over here to our final story, quick shout out to our friends at BetUS. Go to chatsports.com/EaglesBet. Use that promo code Eagles125. Get that 125% deposit bonus whenever you first sign up. And bet my picks or don't bet my picks, because I didn't do well last week, and I'll show you what I did with my money here. I went $10 on each one of these games. I went Cincinnati -2.5 versus the Browns, loss. I went Philadelphia +2, loss. I did go Packers to cover. They were +7.5, I believe, at kickoff. I did win that one. I went the over for Patriots-Panthers, but the Panthers are trash, so I don't know why I did that. I lost that one. Then Broncos at Cowboys went the under, and thankfully the Denver defense was great. So did do well in my picks there. Of course, you guys want to jump in on betting in the betting game, do it with our friends at BetUS, chatsports.com/EaglesBet. The promo code is Eagles125. Our final story of the day comes via Odell Beckham Jr. as we await the waiver deadline this afternoon. So if you're following the situation right now, he, of course, has been released, but he's going to be going through waivers the rest of the day today. So if a team wants to claim him and therefore essentially acquire his current contract, about $7.25 million this year, they have to do so by the end of today. So it's likely he's going to go unclaimed, according to multiple sources in the National Football League. Multiple reports from Ian Rappaport have said no team is going to claim him, meaning he's going to be a free agent, which means basically starting tonight/tomorrow, he's going to be available to anyone to sign for any amount of money on any National Football League team. And we talked about this last week, that I do think the Eagles should take a look at a guy like Odell Beckham Jr. Despite his flaws, if he could come in and not be a distraction, he's desperately needed at the wide receiver position. A massive upgrade over a guy like Jalen Reagor, who has done absolutely nothing this year, has been rated one of the worst wide receivers according to Pro Football Focus, and seemingly is an absolute bust. I think I would give Odell an option in terms of being like a 1-year deal with a 2-year option that is very expensive in year 2 if we want to pick up the option that basically says, hey, if you perform well, you're going to get paid, but you got to perform well. And I think that most teams are going to look to do that. The question will really be, where does OBJ want to go? Because reports are suggesting he wants to be a Saint or he wants to be, with Tom Brady and the Bucks. Like, there are not a lot of teams that can afford him, which is kind of the issue for them, but the Eagles can. They have $24 million in free cap space, so I would at least keep an eye out of potential for this to happen, even though I don't necessarily know if it's actually going to happen. But I would be okay with it, and I would give it the thumbs up if Philadelphia wanted to go ahead and pull the trigger. Now, we'll end on this. Naturally, if the Eagles do make a move for OBJ, I'll immediately come on here and get you guys a video. We'll have a video up as quickly as possible, so make sure you guys are subscribed because, even though it's not necessarily that likely, if it were to happen, we'll cover it here on the channel. So go down below, help us out, and hit that red subscribe button. All time for today on our Philadelphia Eagles Now News Rumor video. I'm your host, Thomas Mott, signing off for the rest of your day.